Mark Zuckerberg is testifying in a high-profile social media trial today. Here are the questions I would ask this terrible human being. I'm Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic, and let's dive in. Now, if you're a casual listener of mine, even a longtime follower, you know that I've spent roughly a decade chronicling, categorizing, and talking about all of the actual abuses and violations of law that Mark Zuckerberg, Meta, and their properties, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, etc., have wrought on humanity. Everything from addiction to war crimes, literal war crimes, I have talked about. If you want more, you can go basically review my segment either in video or podcast format entitled "It's Time to Put Mark Zuckerberg in Jail." It's an hour long. So, if you didn't know, and let's dive into the story of today, according to the Associated Press, Mark Zuckerberg is testifying, basically, as I mentioned, in an unprecedented social media trial that questions whether Meta's platforms deliberately addict and harm children. Long and short of it, they absolutely do. So he is testifying today, as I mentioned, possibly as I'm even recording this. And so here are the questions that I would ask him, grouped by overarching topic. These are basically his crimes that I would want answers to, his crimes against humanity, if you really want to be more accurate. Now, I know some of this will go out of scope for this trial. I'm not a lawyer, don't play one on TV. But if nobody else will try to hold him accountable for his global and consistent lies over the years, I will. So let's get to it. The first grouping of categories here is youth mental health and the actual product design itself. So the first question I would ask is, your internal research found Instagram can harm teens, especially teen girls. Why did you not disclose those findings to parents and regulators in real time? And what specific product changes did you decline to make because they would reduce growth and engagement? My next question. Name the top 5 known harms to minors by prevalence and severity that Meta's internal research confirmed. And for each, tell us the exact mitigation you shipped, the date, and the measured impact of that mitigation. And if you can't, why not? And full disclosure, they didn't change a thing for the most part. Question number 3. Whistleblower testimony states that Meta, quote, chooses profit over safety, end quote. That's Frances Haugen. What concrete metrics did you use to decide where safety loses to growth? And will you release those decision frameworks? Next question. Will you commit to publishing an independent internal audit of Instagram's impact on teens' mental health, methodology, and results? And also basically commit to repeating this annually? If not, why? What is Meta's current estimate of how many minors are on Instagram and Facebook despite age rules? And what checks like ID or age assurance are you willing to add, even if it reduces signups? Now, this question, by the way, goes to basically the harm the youth claims that have been raised in congressional hearings, basically about Facebook and Instagram. Next question. Why should the public believe Meta will self-regulate youth safety when whistleblower documents say internal research repeatedly confirmed harms and leadership still delayed action? And yeah, they haven't really done anything about this. And they know that they're doing this. Whistleblowers, internal documents, everything has been dumped. So the next grouping of questions by topic here is basically on transparency, governance, and accountability. So question number 7, if you're keeping track at home, is you have unique voting control over Meta. What checks exist that can overrule you on safety decisions? And will you support structural governance changes so safety cannot be sidelined to growth? Now, FYI, if you didn't know, their FTC settlement required significant privacy governance changes. So this question is basically whether safety has comparable governance at Meta. And it doesn't, in my opinion. It really doesn't. Next question. Will you commit to a policy that when internal research shows credible risk to severe harm or of severe harm, like self-harm, exploitation, incitement, Meta must publish a public risk bulletin within 90 days? Will you commit to that? If not, why? I think they should. Next question. Why did you refuse to appear before the UK Parliament's inquiry, and do you believe democratic oversight is optional for platforms with national scale power? Now, I personally believe that Zuckerberg truly believes he is above the law, given his past actions. We're talking literally aiding and abetting war crimes and genocides, and we'll get to that. So my next topic is basically Cambridge Analytica, privacy, and psychographic targeting, which is a huge problem with Facebook as well. So question number 10, Cambridge Analytica obtained Facebook user data at massive scale via the app ecosystem. Precisely which engineering, policy, and enforcement failures enabled that? And which individual leaders were held accountable? We all know they weren't, for the record. FYI, his congressional testimony was a complete sham. I watched the whole thing angrily, and I tweeted out on that day live that basically if every member of Congress had just sent their grandkids to question him, he would have been screwed. He made $4 billion lying to Congress that day because Congress had no idea how to question him. It was an absolute joke. No changes, in my opinion, have been made. Next question. The FTC imposed Facebook with fined Facebook $5 billion and imposed sweeping privacy restrictions. What specific privacy promises did you break that triggered the FTC action, and why should anyone trust Meta's new promises now? Quite frankly, we can't. Next question. The SEC charged Facebook with misleading investors about the misuse of data risks, settling for $100 million US. What did you personally know? When did you know it? And why were disclosures not corrected sooner? I'll never answer that one. Next question. Will you commit today to a ban on micro-targeting categories for minors and sensitive traits, such as mental health, and publish an enforcement report? If not, why? Now, this question is, FYI, grounded in the documented misuse of data risks and the broader psychographic mining that Facebook has been caught doing. Remember, Cambridge Analytica was building psychological profiles and then selling it to political campaigns like Ted Cruz's presidential campaign. Steve Bannon got access to this, and a whole bunch of others. And quite frankly, they were never really held accountable for this, and their fines are slaps on the wrist given the size of the company. Now, the next topic group here is Facebook's incitement, its violence amplification, its human rights impacts and abuses. Question 14. UN reporting and investigators said Facebook played a major determining role in spreading hate in Myanmar. What exact algorithmic and moderation failures allowed that? And why did Meta not treat Myanmar as a top-tier risk market earlier? And so Facebook literally aided and abetted the genocide in Myanmar. They were essentially, the military junta in Myanmar was using Facebook, which was a major news delivery information to the general population of Myanmar. They were delivering absolute falsehoods on their target, which ended up being one of the largest human displacements in the world, as well as a mass killing literally in the streets of the Rohingya Muslims. Question number 5. Amnesty International concluded Meta's systems promoted violence against the Rohingya and called for reparations. Will Meta pay reparations or establish a victim compensation fund? If not, why? And they won't. He's all about money. I'd put my money on that. Number 16, question 16. Meta commissioned and received a Myanmar human rights impact assessment. Which recommendations did you reject, and were any rejected because they conflicted with your growth or engagement goals? You should go read, basically, Careless People by Sarah Wynne Williams, another whistleblower that was on the inside of Facebook and actually went to Myanmar prior to that genocide. It's absolutely fascinating, terrifying, and disgusting. Not her, just Mark Zuckerberg and Meta. Question 17. Outside of Myanmar, what is your high-risk country playbook? And why should anyone believe it's actually sufficient if past reviews have shown catastrophic gaps in your planning? And yeah, I live my day in risk, quantification, mitigation for cybersecurity, for AI, for politics, and a whole bunch of other things. And their risk playbook is an absolute joke because I don't think they have one. And if they do, it's a risk to our bottom line. So we better improve there or expand. The next topic group is Middle East, because there have been some huge issues here. Question 18. Human Rights Watch documented systemic suppression and censorship of Palestine-related content on Instagram and Facebook. Why did you do this? Was it policy, automation, government requests, or classifier bias? What has changed afterwards? Now, that's very interesting because Facebook will kowtow to governments left and right. If you are pro-Palestine or anti-Palestine, I'm not adjudicating that. I do not care what your political beliefs are. I literally do not. So you can here in, let's say, the United States, Canada, other places, put pro or anti-Palestine anything there. But they shut it down in the Middle East, and that has got to be basically government control, or it's them saying this is what we think the governments would want, and so we're going to do this to please them. That is very undemocratic. Number 19, will you publish a full accounting of content moderation error rights for Arabic and other under-resourced languages, including false positives that suppress human rights reporting? If not, why? Now remember, it's important to understand that Facebook was caught facilitating literal war crimes in the Middle East. So the selling of antiquities and other aspects of items from war zones is illegal per the Geneva Convention, per the International Criminal Court, and all of that. And Facebook Marketplace and Facebook forums were selling antiquities and artifacts out of war zones. That is a war crime. And their response to that was, well, we didn't have enough Arabic speakers to go around. Well, then why are you in Arabic speaking countries? That's a huge problem, right? And then there is Zuckerberg's public statements versus just honest to God reality. Question number 20. Your public statements emphasize safety, but whistleblower testimony says harms were, quote, confirmed repeatedly, end quote, by internal research, which is accurate. So why did your words and actions not match its knowledge? Mark Zuckerberg lies. He lies and lies and lies. Go watch or listen to It's Time to Put Mark Zuckerberg in Jail. My God. Question 21. What percentage of safety fixes proposed by integrity teams were deprioritized or rolled back after your leadership review? Will you release that data? We know from whistleblowers that they had internal teams that were working on the psychological negative impacts of Instagram and Facebook on things like teens, specifically teen girls and others. They had the data, and basically Zuckerberg cut to the bone the trust and safety teams. There's no oversight internally there. There just really isn't, in my opinion. 22. Do you accept personal responsibility for outcomes when Meta systems predictably amplified harmful content, such as self-harm content, hate, and incitement? And if you do accept responsibility, what personal consequences or governance limits are you willing to expect? I'd love him to answer that. He never will. And the last two questions, basically, that Zuckerberg should never be able to avoid are simply this. Question 23. Will you, Mark Zuckerberg, commit to independent audits, default minimum data collection for minors or blocking minors from your platforms, algorithmic transparency for high-risk markets, and meaningful penalties when Meta misses safety targets? If not, which parts do you refuse and why? And the last question that I've got is, name the single decision you made that you believe caused the most harm globally, and explain why you made it. Then explain what you would do differently today with measurable commitments and dates. Between the knowing destruction of the youth's mental health, the legion of lies, the aiding and abetting of war crimes, the aiding and abetting of genocides, the extreme data collection at our expense of our privacy without our knowledge or full consent, the spying on us for political campaigns, and so much more. I'll say it again. It's time to put Mark Zuckerberg in jail. Take care.